So fine. So far we have seen, first of all, how to create the objects using the standard navigation. We created all these objects. And then we have seen how to create the fields inside the objects. This was the second thing. So we created few fields inside the hiring manager and then the candidate object yesterday. And then how to arrange the fields, in a proper way, how to arrange the fields inside the two columns and how to introduce the sections. And then how to partitionize this particular page into different sections. And then how to bring the fields inside the sections and all these things that we have seen. Now, one thing which was left with the page layout customization is like how to make a field as to be a mandatory field, right? So this was our discussion. We were seeing, what we can do, what we can achieve with the page layout customization. So apart from the things like, how to introduce the fields and how to bring the fields into the columns and how to bring the fields inside the sections, how to arrange them inside two columns, the rest of the thing. One more thing was there, how to make a field as to be a mandatory field, because we know this, when I was telling you what are the different ways to make a field a mandatory field. So that time I told you that altogether there are 5 different ways to make a field to be a mandatory. The first one was like, whenever you create a field, you have a checkbox called as required. Now with this required checkbox, and if we make it active, if we select it, so the fields become a mandatory field. The second was the page layout customization, and that is why that is what we are going to learn right now. Third is the validation rule, and the fourth is trigger, and fifth is the visual force page. So by the visual force page programming also you could make a field as to be a mandatory. So there are these are the 5 different techniques for making a field as a mandatory field. Okay, now see, so I wanted to make a field like let's make this passport number as a mandatory field. Now you could see that this is not a mandatory, but let's make this field as a mandatory field. So how could do that? Just open the force.com quick access menu and go to this edit layout. Now in the edit layout, you have seen that let's come to this particular field. In the additional information section, I have a passport number field. So if you if you bring your cursor over here, you could see that on the right hand side there are 2 different icons. One is to remove, the another one is for the properties. So you need to click on this properties, and then there are 2 different options. We could make it read only and we could make it a required. Okay. If you find it difficult to locate this icon and just click, आपको slip हो जाए cursor, यहाँ पहुँच जाए. So there is the second way to open that box is just bring your cursor over here on the field, whatever you wanted to change the property of that field, just make a double click. Okay, so this is also one of the way to open this particular property dialog box. Okay, just go to that particular field and make a double click of your mouse so that this will going to open. So I wanted to make this field as to be a required field, so just click on the required button and click OK. Now this fields become a mandatory field. So let's save this first so that the changes should be reflected. And now you see this passport number has become a mandatory field. Previously we have seen that name is by default a mandatory field, and name is a default standard field also. Email, we created it as a mandatory. Contact number, we created this as mandatory. PAN and expected cities were also mandatory. Now with the page layout customization, I make this passport number as to be a mandatory field. So whatever the field you wanted to make it a compulsory field. If I go to hiring manager probably, and I could see that HR email ID is not a required field, let's make this as a required. With the page layout customization, there are 2 different ways to do that. So with the page layout customization, just go to this edit layout, go to that particular field. The field is HR email ID. Make a double click over here. Within this dialog box, just select the required and click the OK, and then save it. And then save it. So this field actually becomes a mandatory field. See, so this is the way to make a field to be a mandatory field with the page layout customization. Now we have left with one more thing is let's now create this position object with the schema builder, and we will compare after this. After this has been done, we will compare these 2 techniques. From the last 2 days, actually, we were learning things related to the standard navigation. Like first of all, how to create the object, and then how to create the fields using the standard navigation. So we have seen two different examples for that, inside the hiring manager, inside the candidate. For these two objects, actually, we have followed the same technique of the standard navigation. Now, let's move on to a new technique of creating the object and creating a field is something called a schema. So let's see how to create the fields inside, and probably first of all, how to create the objects. So let's go to the setup menu and go to the build menu. Inside the build menu, you have a direct option for the schema builder. Let's click this schema builder. And I'm just clearing all and making the canvas to be fully available. So you have this tab, here, you could see that you have this tab. There's a tab like right now you are onto this tab object, and just adjacent to this, just adjacent to this, I could see that there is another tab elements, there's another tab elements. So let's click on the elements. So if you click on the elements, you see these many are the options, objects and the fields. Objects, this one is the option. Fields, these are the options. Okay. So I first of all, I would like to create an object. I would like to create an object. So what I'll do is that I'll select this object, drag and drop it. Drag, drop. Just it. Give the label with what name you wanted to create the object. I wanted to create this object with the name called as positions. Okay. Give the plural label for that. So the plural label will be like in a positions like this. Okay. Do you want to make it something like allow reports? Yeah, allow activities, track history. These are the optional options what we have seen on that page. Okay. I just wanted to make it deployed and add the nodes. Add the nodes. So these are like, yeah, add the nodes, and let me just save this. Okay, object create. Okay, that's it. This is the only step, this is the only step of creating the object. If you probably compare this, if you probably compare this with this technique, standard navigation, go to setup and build and then create the object. So you first of all require to, create the new custom object and do something on this particular page, then click the save button, and then you will be going for the next page, do something on the next page, then save it or next, then go to some. So at least 3 to 4 different steps were required for creating a new custom object. Even for creating even for the creating a field inside the object, there are 2 to 3 different steps there that were required that time, right? But here, it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. You just drag and drop it over here, and a small form was there, just filling the entries in the small form. Just few of the entries we need to fill, and we have created this object. Okay, so let's now okay, before that, see, object is created, position object is created. But if I ask you this, for this object, does a tab is created? The answer is no, because if the tab was created, this object was being listed out just adjacent to the books. Books ke baad mein, you could see the object position. But because the tab was not created, and so this object is being not listed out on the tab bar. So what is the first? And okay, in case of advantage, what is advantage? So it's like it's a simple kind of interface. Moreover, it's a graphical interface. This was the advantages. Here you actually need to branch from one page to another page to another page to another page, and at least 3 to 4 branchings were required for creating an object. Here is like, you just need to drag and drop. It's a graphical tool, and just filling a small form, we could create the object. So this is the advantage. Now, what is the drawback? The drawback is that, whenever you create any object with the schema builder, the object is definitely going to get created, but for that object, tab is not created. For that object, the tab is not created by default. There is no such checkbox KM. Launch a custom tab wizard after saving this custom object. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है, ठीक है? So whenever I create any object, for example, let me create one more object. Okay, I create one more object called as loan. Just drag and drop it over here. Okay, just drag and drop it over here. What's the name? The name is loan, or rather, loan. Okay, loans. Okay, this is the plural form of this. Now I want to allow reports on that. Allow activities. Okay, add notes. So there is no such checkbox called as launch a new custom tab wizard after saving this. Okay, so although I'm creating the object loan object, it's like a simple thing to create the object. But then for the object, if I refresh this, even though the tab is not created. So this is the only drawback. This is the only drawback in case of the tab object creation. This is the only drawback what we feels whenever we create any object with the help of a schema builder. But then if I talk about the advantages, see, advantages are like, okay, these are actually, it's a pretty simple step and a pretty fast step also. With the schema builder, if at all I create the objects, it's actually fast, because we just don't require to branch from one page to another. It's always whatever the thing we require to create, it's available on the same canvas, it's available on the same page, and we just don't require to move we just don't require to branch from one page to another page. So that is the difference. And in the real time, we actually follow this technique. The only drawback what we face over here is that if I create the object, tab is not created. So I should follow some additional steps to create the tab. This is the only thing which is required to be done. So do you know this now? Now you know this, how to create a tab. So go to the setup and then build, and then in the create option, you have an option to create the tab. Just click on the tabs. What kind of tab? A custom object tab. Why? Because I created two more custom objects, position and the loan. For these two objects, there is no tab. The tab is right now for the author, book, candidate, and the hiring manager. But I could see that, for the position and the loan, there is no tab. So let's create a new tab. Click on this new button. Here it's going to list it out all those objects. That object are there, the tab is not there. So I wanted to create a tab for the position object. Now let me select the tab style for that one. Position object. So I'm selecting this apple. Click the next button. Make it visible. Default on. Default वैसे भी on ही रहता है. And then make it visible for every profile user. Just save it. And now you see one more object is being created. Position object. With a default field, ID, name, owner, created by, last modified by. So these are the fields inside the position object. Now let me arrange them properly. So I'm actually clicking this, customizing my tab bar. I just wanted to see the position object adjacent to the hiring manager, candidate, hiring manager, position, and the candidate. I wanted to see it like this. So I'm making this customization. Okay, so done with this. Now see. Now see. So let's go to the object. I'm excluding that loan. Let me have the position object over here. So inside the position object, I wanted to create all these fields. Yesterday, we have created the fields inside the candidate object, inside the hiring manager. So for creating the field, we have followed standard navigation. Now let's do it with the second technique, is your schema builder. So inside the position object, this is my position object. I wanted to create the fields. So these are all the fields. So the fields are been listed out: auto number, formula, roll up, lookup, hierarchy, and everything. Every field, or 19 different types of data types have been listed out over here. So first of all, position name, that is already created because it's a mandatory field. The second is reference ID. I wanted to create a field called as reference ID, and the type of reference ID, data type, is auto number. So let me select auto number and just drag and drop it inside your, just drag from here and drop it inside this particular box. If you drop it elsewhere, it's not going to get created. It's not going to get created. So you need to drag it and drop it over here. Okay. So give the label reference ID. Reference ID. Auto number. So it will ask you to display format कैसा रखना चाहिए. To display format ref dash opening bracket closing bracket within this 000, and the starting number will be 0001. Now generate the auto number for the existing record, and let me save this. So one field is created, reference ID field is created of the type auto number C. The second, I wanted to create a field called as location. Okay, I wanted to create a field called as location. It's a pick list field. You see, it's a pick list field. So select select the pick list and just drop it over here. Give the label this. Now here I wanted to enter the values. The same values. Everywhere the same values are there. So let me copy this Hyderabad and everything. And the same thing is like you whenever you wanted to enter these things, you should enter it like you should enter in a single line. And if you wanted to give the description and help us, go ahead and give it. But otherwise, it's not at all required. Okay, it's not at all required. So display them alphabetically. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Use the first value as a default. No, it's not required. Save it. and one more field is going to be get created, location, right? Okay. After location, I wanted to create number of vacancies, number of vacancies, and okay, location was mandatory. Probably location was mandatory, but if you see, if I make a double click over here, there's no such option to make this pick list as a mandatory. So yesterday, if you probably remember, I was telling you this concept. Okay, whenever we create a pick list from the standard navigation, we have an option to make it mandatory. But whenever we create a pick list from your schema builder, there's no such option. तो उसको कैसे करना वो आप पेज लेआउट कस्टमाइजेशन से कर सकते हो. ठीक है, we can do that with the page layout customization. Now I'm creating another field called as number of vacancies, and it's a number field. It's a number field and it's a mandatory field. So let me first of all, just drag number from here and drop it. Number of the vacancies. Default is like length is 2. You make it required. So this is all the checkbox which is present over here also. So I'm making this as a required. I'm making this as a mandatory field. Number of vacancies is now a mandatory field. Okay. And then position status is a pick list. See, position status is a pick list. So let me drag and drop pick list. Give the label as the position status. Values I wanted to enter by myself. The first value is new position. New position. After the new position, this like open approved, and then in progress. It's like in progress, and then in progress, and then on hold. The next value is on hold. The second last is recruited, and the last one is closed. And display the values in alphabetical. Use the first value as to the default. Okay. This order में उसी order में display करना है, but the first value I wanted this to be display as default value. So let me now save this, and moreover, you see there is no such option to make this field as a mandatory field. And then open date. Open date is a date field. So let me just drag and drop date data type. Open date. ये required है क्या? So required के बारे में mention तो नहीं है, so it's not required. So let me just save this. Open date. After that, the next is milestone date. The close date. So closed. So the next is milestone date. Milestone date is also a date type field, and it's a required field. So make it required and save it. One more field is created. After that, minimum budget is there. It's a currency field. It's not mandatory. So let me select the currency from here. See, one more thing, if you probably have identified, along with the data type, and one small icon is there, one small icon is there. This one small icon is there. So with the help of icon also, it's really become easy to identify the field. So ये वहाँ नहीं था. So there are few of the benefits what we get over here. So let's make, let's drag and drop the currency field, milestone field, and it's like the length is minimum budget. The length is 10. Let me get the length size to be the 10. Make it required because it's mentioned in the IDD that it's a mandatory field. Maximum budget. Minimum. Okay, minimum budget I was checking. Minimum budget is not mandatory, by the way. So minimum budget was not mandatory, but the maximum budget field is mandatory. Maximum budget. So again, it's a currency field. So let me just drag and drop the currency field. The length is 10, and it's a mandatory field. It's a required field. Save it. So probably you are identifying one thing, कि यहाँ पे काफी स्पीड में काम हो रहा है. अगर आप पिछला इंटरफेस याद करें कल का वीडियो, so but the time when I was creating the fields inside the candidate, तो you probably remember कि एक एक field create करने के लिए हमको कितना navigations जाना पड़ रहा था. For just creating one field, 2 to 3 branchings was there, है ना. ईमेल के लिए आपको कम से कम 2 से 3 से 4 branchings थी. For every field, whenever you at all wanted to create a field, आपको कितना branching करना पड़ रहा था. New, उसके बाद में select the data type from here, select the data type from here. कोई भी data type, for example currency, and then click the next. This was the first page. फिर ये second page आता है, after doing something in the second page में आप कुछ करने के बाद में फिर आप you go to the third page, आप third page पे जाते हो, you go to the third page make it visible, then fourth page में आने के बाद में फिर जब आप इसको सेव करते हो, जब आप इसको सेव करते हो, then you will be able to create a field. तो एक field create करने के लिए कितना navigation था आपका, कितना टाइम जा रहा था, and here it's like it's pretty straight thing. तो यहाँ पे जल्दी fields create होती हैं. तो this is one of the thing what we have observed. So maximum budget, yes, I already created. Now let me create HR email ID of the type email and make it mandatory also. So email, just drag and drop it, give the label, make it required, save it. That's it. The field is created, field saved. And then contact number is of the type phone. So let me select the phone data type, just drag and drop it over here, save it. And one more field is created, field saved. See. And then travel required, it's a checkbox. So travel required is a checkbox. So checkbox, just click over here, travel required. Default is unchecked. So just save this. And one more field is created. So it's like, यहाँ बहुत जल्दी हो रहा है, आप खुद ही ऑब्जर्व कर लो इस चीज को कि वहाँ के कंपैरिजन में यहाँ पे जल्दी होता है. That is why we, as in real time, we actually use the schema builder for all these things. ठीक है, अब इसमें कुछ drawbacks हैं that we are going to cover. Position description is text area long. Now you will see what is the difference between long and rich. Text area long. So position description is this. How many lines you wanted to be get visible? I wanted to be visible like 5 lines. ठीक है, and ठीक है, इसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं. Save this. Position description is text area long. Skills required is text area rich. So rich text area. This is the rich text area. Just drag and drop it over here. Here I don't wanted this much of line. Having 10 line is more than enough. Let me save this. Okay. So everything, everything whatever required is being created. और जल्दी हुआ, काफी जल्दी हुआ. So if I go to now position object, अब देखो drawback क्या है यहाँ पे. Now if I go to the position object, I created all these fields. I create all these fields. These are the fields inside the object. Okay, almost how much? We created 15 different fields. We created 15 different fields inside the position object. Now let's go to the position object, click on the new button. Do you find all 15 fields over here? Answer is no. How many fields are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, name to हमने create किया ही नहीं. So out of the 15, only 4 fields. Only 4 fields: number of vacancies, milestone date, minimum, maximum budget, and the HR email ID. I could only see these fields. Why? Why? This is the second drawback. First drawback, while creating the object. So your first drawback was, whenever we create an object with the schema builder, what we have observed that object is created, tab is not created. So we require to additionally follow the steps to create the tab. This was the first drawback related to object creation, and probably is the only drawback. Okay. Second, while I create the fields inside the object, my fields create karta hu object ke andar, what we have found is that only the mandatory fields, I mean the fields which we have make required at the time of creation from this, when I drag and drop it, and at the time of creation, the fields which I make it a required field, only those fields are initially listed out. Because see, only the 4 fields we have make it as a required. We created 15 different fields, but 11 fields are not required, 4 fields were required. So initially you will see only those 4 fields. Only the mandatory fields are going to be listed out. Now how to bring another fields? वो बची fields कैसे ले आना? तो वो आपको पता है, just go with the force.com quick access menu and go with the page layout customization. So click on the edit layout, come to this interface, always visible section, and you could see these are the fields. ये देखिए जो already है, like created by is already over here, है ना, created by is already created by. तो ये आपका मतलब ये highlighted नहीं है, बस the contact number is not there, it's being highlighted. HR email ID is already here somewhere, HR email, yeah, this is the HR email ID. So it's like उसका scope, उसके ऊपर scope नहीं दिख रहा है मुझको, last modify पे scope नहीं दिख रहा. But if I bring my cursor on this becomes a draggable cursor. Why? Because this field is not over here. तो ऐसी जितनी भी fields हैं, जो क्रिएट हुई है यहाँ पे नहीं है, वो सारी यहाँ मौजूद है। फर्स्ट ब्रिंग एवरी वन ऑफ, सबको लाओ। अब जैसे कॉन्टेक्ट नंबर आपने लाया तो यहाँ से देखो उसका स्कोप हट गया, लोकेशन ला लो, पहले सबको ड्रैग करके ला लो, उसके बाद में हम इसको अरेंज करेंगे जो हमने कल किया है ना। वी अरेंज देम इनटू डिफरेंट डिफरेंट सेक्शंस, वी विल अरेंज देम इनटू डिफरेंट डिफरेंट कॉलम्स, वो सब करेंगे अपन, सब करेंगे। ठीक है, सो मैंने सारी फील्ड्स ला लिया, अब देखो आप यहाँ से सारी स्कोप हट गए। ओके, now let's do what we have done yesterday. So first of all, let's create some of the sections over here. कुछ sections create कर लेते हैं। तो first let me just drag and drop it over here. Like if the name has to be milestone and budget section. Okay, so here I just don't want it to be get displayed on the detail layout. I wanted it to be displayed on the edit layout only. ठीक है, so मैं edit layout select कर रहा हूँ। I wanted to have 2 columns and the tab key order left to right चाहिए मुझको। So let me just click OK. So we have introduced a new section called as milestone date and the budget section. ठीक है, so let me bring few of the fields over here, like open date and milestone date, open date and the milestone date. And then budget is like minimum and the maximum budget. So we have minimum budget, let me put it over here, and we have a maximum budget, let me put it over here. Okay. Let me introduce one more section with the name called as skills and additional information section. I wanted it to display on the detail layout only, and tab key orders left to right. So let me have one more section, skills and additional information section. Here I wanted to have like skills required. Let me put it over here, and skills required and owner, passport, contact, position description, position and number of vacancies, position status, contact number, location. Okay, let me have travel required over here, passport required over here. Position description also, I just wanted to put it over here. So let me have this travel required and the passport required over here. Position description and then skills required. Position description, skills required. ठीक है, एक बार मैं देख लेता हूँ कैसा दिख रहा है। Location, number of vacancies, let me put it over here. Position status, reference ID, position status, and then reference ID. Fine, no problem. Let me first of all let me save this and see how does it looks like. एक बार देख लेता हूँ उसको. So this is how it actually looks like. This is how. So let's do something. एक काम करते हैं, skills को इधर ले लेते हैं, skills required को, और ये तीनों चीजों को इस तरफ ले लेते हैं, right? बाकी का इंटरफेस तो मुझे ठीक ही लग रहा है, कोई ऐसी ठीक ही लग रहा है। I mean, बस एक ही कस्टमाइजेशन, ये स्किल्स का ये पूरा सेक्शन जो है इसको इधर ले लेते हैं, इसको इधर ले लेते हैं, थोड़ा सा अल्टी पल्टी कर लेते हैं और कुछ नहीं। सो लेट्स गो टू द एडिट लेआउट वंस अगेन एंड लेट्स पोजीशन, इसको यहाँ ला लेते हैं, इसको भी यहाँ ला लेते हैं, और इसको भी यहाँ ला लेते हैं, एंड लेट्स ब्रिंग दिस ओवर हियर। ट्रेवल रिक्वायर्ड को नीचे, पोजीशन डिस्क्रिप्शन, ये तीन चीजें उधर। लेट मी नाउ सेव एंड लेट्स हैव अ प्रीव्यू कि हाउ डज इट लुक्स लाइक। Okay, probably it seems to be good. ठीक लग रहा है ये, ठीक है। Else you could take these two to in the somewhere else आप इसको लेके जा सकते हो, ऐसा कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। but it's look okay, chalta hai, itna koi aisa wo dikkat nahi hai. So now see, now we created this with the schema builder, and you know what's the drawback. If I create the object, if I create the object with the schema builder, the object is going to be get created, the tab is not going to get created, aapko tab banana padega. Moreover, when you create the fields, so only initially those fields that are mandatory, those are going to be listed out. Then you require to bring those other fields with the help of page layout customization. You require to bring the fields, and then everything whatever you wanted to just introduce the sections and just arrange the fields inside the two columns, inside the fields, arrange the fields inside the sections also, everything. Okay, so go with this by today. And today I'm going to stop it over here, because this is the only thing now. Yeah, I wanted to give you an assignment. It's just a point of discussion only. Okay, we have followed two different techniques. Like, we created the object and we created the fields using the standard navigation and the schema builder. Now I just wanted you to list it out few points. What is your observation during all this process? Last 3 days, what you are observing, while creating an object, while creating the fields, what are the things that you have observed with the standard navigation and with the schema builder? Just list out those points. Okay, and take this as an assignment. Post your answer in the group by today itself. So go with this. By tomorrow, I'm going to start with the new thing. After this, once we have completed with the schema builder, so probably I'm going to start with a new topic by tomorrow. Today, I'm going to end up here right now.